Hi, my name is Kathryn Delaney. I'm here with you to share with you one of my deepest passions, which is aromatherapy and the study of essential oils. I started working with essential oils 25 years ago at the age of 14 when I discovered that I was pretty allergic to most synthetic fragrances and scents that were used in perfumes and soaps and fabric detergents in and around my family's home. I had to start using things that were unfragranced and then came across essential oils, which I'm looking over here at this little plant or remnant of a little plant. This is lavender, which if you have any familiarity with essential oils, you've likely been introduced to our little friend lavender, or Lavandula angustifolia, as it is called in Latin. And it was one of my very first allies as well. And tonight, what I want to show you is just how concentrated this little guy is. And part of my efforts and aims to do that is to encourage you guys to dilute your essential oils in everything that you're using them for in the proper substance, and also to know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to use essential oils. So as I said, I started working with essential oils 25 years ago. I first started working with them mostly for topical situations, skin conditions. Also used them, for diffusing, for like respiratory conditions, and then also began working with them for like emotional states. And they became so interesting to me because they are the one botanical medicine that seemed to just like touch on all these different realms of our being and help us in so many ways. And so of course I studied as much about them as I possibly could. And then my mom got really sick and I wanted to help her with essential oils, and it wasn't really taken seriously and was, seen more as a hobby. And so I further went and studied with a nurse practitioner and became certified in clinical aromatherapy. And that was about 6 or 7 years ago. And earned that certification in 2011, and now, after years of study in herbal medicine, I'm currently earning my certification in clinical herbalism. And people ask me, well, why? And, we have this whole range of botanical medicine that we have access to, and we're really blessed to have access to it and to be able to use it in our lives because, different countries treat different realms of botanical medicine differently, and not everything is appropriate for all situations. And so I really wanted to understand like how herbs were used and why they were appropriate for certain people in certain situations and not in other situations. And obviously I think this is a big passion of mine, so I'm pretty dedicated to it. And I mostly am putting together this video because I want to give you guys like a visual aid as far as how concentrated essential oils are, so that when you go to use them, you make sure you dilute them properly, and if you are considering ingestion, which I actually discourage, and I'll go into a little bit more why, then maybe you should actually consider like a tincture or something, or a tablet, or some other form of the botanical medicine, because I have several reasons to go into that. I'll go into that in a little while too. So first off, let's look at how concentrated lavender is. Like, every plant produces a different amount of essential oil, and that is primarily dependent on how many oil ducts there are in the plant. And some plants actually have multiple different parts of the plant that are aromatic. Like, if you look at neroli and petitgrain and orange, those are all the same plant. and they're all just different parts of the plant. They're the leaf, which is, or I'm sorry, petitgrain is the leaf, and then you have orange, which is actually from the peel, and then you have neroli, which is actually like the flower before it goes into fruit, and they all have different scents, and they all have different amounts of oil to them, and they're all kind of actually, because orange fruit's cold pressed, it's produced different as an essential oil than neroli, which is usually done CO2. Sometimes it's done as a steam distillation, but it takes a lot of neroli to create essential oil. And then the leaf, which is the petitgrain. So we're going to look at lavender, which if you research the mass to volume transference of how much lavender it takes, this little guy, to create essential oil, it takes 200 pounds of these little tiny buds to create 16 ounces of essential oil, which is, 2 fluid cups, or roughly where this marking is on this mason jar, which is, or this ball jar more appropriately, because it's a ball jar. It's about half of this jar, which is a quart-sized jar, and that's 16 ounces, so it takes 200 pounds, which is kind of hard to visualize, so I wanted to break that down a little bit more for people. We're going to have mass over here, we're going to have volume over here, and in order to do this, we kind of need to know a few different units that transfer over, which is, every pound, for instance, is 16 ounces, so every pound is equal to 16 ounces, and then when we look at volume, we have to consider that volume is in liters and milliliters and pound, and weight is usually in grams and ounces and pounds. So when we're looking at ounces and weight, that's actually equivalent to 28 grams is 1 ounce. And over here, 1 ounce is equal to 30 milliliters. And just as like a basic conversion rule, 1 milliliter is equal to 1 gram. They're like equivalent. So when we want to see, we want to get like an idea of how much essential oil we get out of plant matter, we can break this down a little bit. So if we have 200 pounds and every pound is 16 ounces, we're going to multiply 200 by 16. Go to my trusty little calculator here, and just so you know, like for some other like plants to consider, rosemary, it has a lot more oil in it. It only takes 50 pounds of rosemary to create 16 ounces of rosemary essential oil. Peppermint takes 256 pounds to create 16 ounces of essential oil. Jasmine, it takes 1,000 pounds of jasmine flowers to create 16 ounces of essential oil. Makes you understand why it's a little bit expensive. Rose, it takes 16,000 pounds to create 16 ounces, and usually you find that as an absolute, which is like a CO2 or a hexane extraction instead of a essential oil, or you can find an auto, a rose auto, which is a steam distillation of like a cohabitation of rose, so that they can distill it with the rose petals and the water underneath, so it's basically like recirculating it and extracting as much as possible, but it takes 16,000 pounds. Those tiny little rose petals. And cinnamon bark, it takes 13,000 pounds to create 5 ounces. So it's about a third of that other jar. So, cinnamon, it takes a lot, but it also makes a decent amount. That it's also cinnamon bark, right? So it's like part of a tree. It takes a long time to create. It's also very dermatoxic to the skin, so it's going to burn people. So you really don't want to use cinnamon bark on the skin. You can use cinnamon leaf on the skin, diluted to maybe 0.5% in a blend, or like a 1/5% in a blend because it's so hot and it can be really damaging to the skin if you don't dilute it. It can burn people just even in the pocket. So, you know, there are some important reasons to consider how concentrated essential oils are, and that even though they're natural, it is really key, really key to dilute them. But back to lavender, our gentle little lavender, this little friend of ours. So if we multiply 200 by 16, we'll be able to start like converting this down. So 200 times 16 ounces, because we have 200 pounds, is going to be 3,200 ounces. Okay, because we turned it into ounces from pounds. And that's still equivalent to 16 ounces because we haven't done anything to that. So we're going to divide this by 16. If we divide it by 16, we're going to have 200 ounces per ounce. Okay, because these are still in the same unit. So it takes 200 ounces by weight of lavender to create 1 ounce, 1 fluid ounce of essential oil, which is equivalent to 30 mils, right? So we have 1 ounce is equivalent to 30 mils. We want to see what maybe like a mil looks like in it. So if we want to see what a mil looks like, and if you just want like a general reference to what a mil or a milliliter looks like, this is a 3 milliliter pipette, and just for a visual aid, there's 3 mils, 1, 2, 3 mils. Each mil is roughly 20 to 30 drops depending on the viscosity of the essential oil. So we want to see just like how much lavender it takes by mass to create a single mil, because now we know that it takes 200 ounces, right, to create a single ounce of essential oil, whereas it takes 200 pounds to create 16 ounces. So let's go ahead and convert this into mil, which is 30 mil, because 1 ounce is equal to 30 mil. And then we're going to convert this into grams because it's a weight. It's actually like a mass. And there's 28 grams per ounce. In weight conversions. So we're going to go ahead and take these 200 ounces and multiply it by 28. And that's going to give us 5,600 grams. So it's 5,600 grams per 30 mil. And in the conversion, a mil is equivalent to a gram. So we can actually go ahead and divide these against each other because their units are able to be used against each other as far as converting. So we're going to divide the 5,600 divided by 30, and we get 186.666667 grams. So it's like 186 2/3 grams is equal to a single mil. Okay. So what does that look like? Because we know what that looks like. That's 20 to 30 drops, which doesn't seem like a lot of essential oil, right? So I have my trusty little pitcher over here. This pitcher is like my juicer pitcher, and I have a little scale right here, which is how I make and measure all my ingredients for like my lotions and stuff that I make. So I'm going to put this empty vessel on here and go ahead and tare the scale, which brings me to 0. And I'm going to make sure that it's on grams because that's the unit that I'm measuring. And I'm going to go ahead and go up to 187 grams because it's, above 186.5. So I'm going to go to 187 because this isn't that delicate. And this is like pretty much a full jar of lavender, organic lavender buds. So I just dumped the whole jar in there, and it's at 102 grams. And then this is like almost another full jar. It's like I'm at 178. Okay. At 187 grams. 187 grams it took to fill this whole thing, which is equivalent to 20 to 30 drops. That right there. It's a lot of plant matter, right? So we just want to look at like what a single dose like comparatively is of tea. That's a therapeutic dose. It's anywhere from, let's see, I'm going to reference this book over here, anywhere from 8 to 12 grams, which is equivalent to like what would fit like in your palm of your hand, like overflowingly, just of lavender buds, because depending on different plants, that's going to be a different amount depending on that the degree of strength of that plant. But lavender, it's 8 to 12 grams, which is a lot. Like if you tried to actually like eat through that much, and that would be for like the whole day, right? That would be like put 8 to 12 grams inside a whole quart jar, make a quart of tea, and then drink that throughout the day. Or, you know, conversely, you could also do a tincture, which would be 2 to 4 mils of lavender tincture, which is an alcohol extraction, which is much, much more dilute than an essential oil. And so there's different ways to take it internally, right? And the reason why I'm sharing this is for a few different reasons. You know, one is because it's really, really easy for people to overdose with essential oils and to hurt themselves. Two, a lot of times people are taking them incorrectly. They're not taking them under the guidance of anyone. They're taking too much of them. They might be preparing their products for ingestions incorrectly, per se, like they're not putting them in a gelatin capsule with olive oil. They're not making sure that it's only like 1 drop per capsule, for instance, because that would actually be the appropriate dose. They might be just drinking it in water, which is actually going to coat their esophagus. They could be taking it readily, which could be affecting the microbiota of their gut, which we all actually need to be healthy in order for us to digest food. And so there's a lot of reasons why someone should reconsider ingesting essential oils, or at least the way they're ingesting essential oils, and at the very least consult someone who's trained appropriately in working with essential oils. And you know, to take a few steps back from that as well, I was recently at a talk that was ran by another aromatherapist who has 40 years of life dedication into the field of aromatherapy, and he was sharing information that was saying in the last 20 years the number of children being accidentally poisoned, you know, and accidentally means like, you know, not that like they ran into it themselves and it was just like within reach. It means like they were being treated by a family member and were accidentally poisoned by essential oils. That number has increased 3-fold in the last 20 years. And so it is really important to me in order for us to continue to use essential oils in our daily lives and to have it accessible in our botanical toolbox, so to speak, that we are really careful and cautious when it comes to using them, because you know, we're exposed to different chemicals every day through like cleaning chemicals, through our air, through our water, through our food, and we need to be aware of what we're doing to our liver and our kidneys and taxing our bodies with, and what we're doing to our inner systems as well as our external systems. And it's really hard to listen to the body if the body's just being like bombarded with things, because it starts to shut things down. And sometimes people are getting, or oftentimes what I'm seeing anyways, people are getting sensitized to essential oils because they haven't been using them appropriately or they haven't been diluted appropriately. And alternatively, a lot more oils are being adulterated, which basically means that, like, so let's look at lavender again, for instance, like our little friend lavender. So there's, every commercial grower is looking for a way to like maximize their crop, right? And they want to grow plants that grow fast and are like high producers. And so they oftentimes will crossbreed plants together in order to get something that produces more oil, grows faster, they can get more output of every year. And lavender is one, because it's so popular, in order to meet demand, they, came up with a way to crossbreed it with another lavender plant, which is a hybrid. And on paper it looks very similar to lavender as far as like its name, but it has different properties in that, lavender, which is said and known to be, pretty relaxing or soothing, as far as like energetically. There are also species of lavender that are pretty stimulating. And so they hybridized the common, most traditional lavender with a lavender that's more stimulating, and they use it to stretch their lavender products. And so now a plant that usually is associated with being, pretty relaxing for the nervous system is all of a sudden has like this other thing happening with it, but no one really understands why, because it's being adulterated with another plant. And that may seem kind of like riddle-ish, but my whole point is that like when you buy like herbs and plants, usually they're, you have to watch for adulteration, you have to watch for what is going into your plant material. And so I think especially in the realm of ingestion, people need to be more careful. And it's a lot easier to be more careful when you're either growing your own plant matter, which is a lot easier when you're making your own tinctures or you're making your own tea and you know what that plant is, as opposed to like buying an essential oil that's made in mass scale by a huge company, at least as far as like internal use goes, because it's really easy to like take too much of an essential oil internally because it is so concentrated. The fact that it takes 187 grams to create a mil, like 20 to 30 drops, is a lot. And there's a lot of effort that goes into it too, as far as like harvesting and distillation, and then to know that like people are adulterating it to boot is kind of disappointing when, like you could drink tea and have a great like benefit for your nervous system that's soothing and relaxing, and like put in some other flavors that you actually enjoy and have this experience of it, instead of like bombarding your system with essential oils. So, I'm gonna get off my soapbox for tonight, or my lavender soapbox for tonight, but I, am really passionate about this subject. A couple years ago, I started working at an essential oil company, and people were asking all the time about ingesting essential oils. So after I started hearing that, and I stopped working for the company, I actually was inspired to create an app called Essentia to help people learn how to properly dilute essential oils for different situations and how to use them in that way. So I'm going to put a link to that below as far as just for information, and then I'm also going to put a link below in the comment area to a blog that I started writing a few years back, one specifically that talks about essential oil ingestion and why I think that the reasoning around grass, or using grass as like, or if you don't know what grass is an acronym for generally regarded as safe for ingestion. and it was intended to be used for like things that are flavoring things or used to create beverages or to create foods, but it specifically states in their description and their like further explanation of what they're speaking to that it's not referencing supplements or anything that's taken on a daily basis, and it specifically goes into like how your dose makes your poison, and so it's not it in the language of the FDA. It doesn't mention essential oils, or it didn't in the way that these companies have referenced it. It wasn't referencing essential oils for daily use and for therapeutic use or therapeutic value in any way, shape, or form, and so that's been kind of stretched logically. And so, with that said, like I go into more of that in the blog just to like explain it a little bit more as far as why I'm concerned about people using essential oils internally all the time. And if I invite you, like, if you have any questions, please post them below, and I'm open to discussion. I'd love to talk to people about this because I think it's really important. I'm not saying that there are never, ever any situations to ingest essential oils. I just think that if it is a rare situation where it does call for it, then it needs to be under the guidance of somebody who can at least make sure that, you're not doing liver damage, you're not doing any damage to yourself long term if you're using it long term for some reason, that its benefit outweighs the possible damage that it could be doing, because it's not intended to be used in that way. And in my opinion, it's really not sustainable for anyone, for the specific body or for our planet, for people to use them in that way. So yeah, I want to open up the topic, and if you have any questions, please post them below. And if you're interested in my app, check it out, as well as my blog. And I look forward to starting some classes and showing people how to make some cool products and with the proper dilutions so that you can get the most out of your essential oils, because they're pretty awesome, and they're also really concentrated. So I hope you're well, and I look forward to making some really amazing things with you in the future. Good night.